Before the Ranger Creed is recited by a formation of Rangers at any ceremony, you will always hear the narrator say this: "Will all Rangers, past and present, please join us as we recite the Ranger Creed." Every Ranger will stand, and as they say those six stanzas, they are transformed back to a time when they had the pleasure and the burden of this brotherhood. That feeling is hard to describe. However, it's one that never leaves you. It's a connection that spans the globe and can be reignited when you hear the phrase, "Hey, Ranger, what battalion are you from?" Amongst this formation, there are Rangers that stand out. They are legends of this elite organization, and when their names are spoken, people instantly have a story and for a moment relive it. Legend of the 75th podcast wants to capture those feelings and those stories. We want to ensure that these legends' triumphs and sacrifices never fade away. So sit back with your favorite adult beverage and listen to the stories from the legends of the 75th. Hey, everybody, welcome back to another episode of Legends of the 75th. I'm pretty excited about this episode. We've been trying to do it for a very, very long time, but we both have busy schedules, and that's just kind of the way that the life works sometimes. So I have the absolute honor and privilege of introducing retired four-star general of the United States Army, Austin Miller. He's a graduate of the Military Academy at West Point, class of 1983. He went on to serve in 2nd Ranger Battalion and units across all of JSOC. And then he had a very, very interesting command and a very interesting time at the Maneuver Center of Excellence at Fort Benning, now Fort Moore, and then went back to JSOC and serving in JSOC as a commander, and then the commander of NATO's Resolute support mission and U.S. forces in Afghanistan from 2018 to 2021. And there's a lot of things that he oversaw, and there's a lot of critical things that he participated across the global war on terrorism and across the globe. So we're definitely going to dive into it in this episode. I'm very, very excited to sit down with you today, sir. How you doing?
Good, Mike. You can call me Scott, okay? I got my
Okay.
Scott. All right, we'll have to get used to that.
Yeah,
But I'm
we
doing well,
definitely.
thank you. And you're right. We've been trying to do this for quite some time now, so I'm glad we were able to connect.
Yeah, and it comes because, and I tell a lot of the guests this, sir, is that you don't realize that people that you've impacted not only with your time as command, but then also from afar, just because they've seen your actions, and they've served underneath you in some capacity, and they just love to hear from you, especially since your retirement. And I'll even name one that I know you know very well, Joe Brierley, that recently retired. So him and I were actually just talking about you the other day, and he was talking about some of the impact that you've had on him and some of the amazing things that you've done. So there, boom, name dropped. So, hey, sir, if we can, let's start at the very beginning. Why did you want to join the military? Why did you want to serve?
Yeah. Hey, Mike, first of all, thanks. And what I just say is, I know your title is Legends of the 75th. I feel a little bit of imposter syndrome with that particular title right up front. So, but again, thanks for having me on this. I go to up to the military academy quite frequently. I'm a senior fellow up there. Perhaps we can talk a little bit about that later. And I get a chance to talk to two cadets, 18 to 22-year-old men, young men and women that are gonna
Yeah.
go ahead and lead our certainly our sons and daughters going forward here. And they'll always ask me, "Did you know you always wanted to be a four-star general?" And I actually tell them I'm the accidental. I mean, even the accidental career officer, let alone a flag officer. I didn't think I was going to stay in the United States military academy for a solid 4 years. And just some things kept happening along the way. And then somewhere in there, you hit the right inspiration, the right inspirational leader,
Right.
things come together. And that sort of pushed me in a direction. And then I just took it 6 months at a time and kept liking it as I moved through the different gates.
Yeah, no, I mean, we all have those pivotal points. I mean, that's where we are shared is one. I definitely didn't think I was going to be a career, but I will even say during my first enlistment, the last, half of my enlistment, I was the guy with the counter on the wall, counting down the days till I got out. And then that one wheeler, or I'm sorry, that one leader, and you know him very well, Master Sergeant Josh Wheeler. That's the guy that changed everything for me.
Yeah, it's a. I don't believe that I knew as a cadet or certainly maybe even a junior officer that really understood the implications of raising your right hand and
Right.
swearing to support and defend the Constitution, which is now it's something I can talk to them about and talk to them about the multiple times they've raised their right hand, and they will again, assuming they're successful on commissioning day, and they'll recite that oath, which talks about the Constitution of the United States of America. And I'm certainly much more cognizant and became more so as I progressed through my military career.
So what would your kind of advice, be to, those young officers or young enlisted, they're just kind of entering their careers then, sir?
When I talk
Sorry.
with the cadets in particular, what I talk to them about is making sure they understand the gravity of what's about to be bestowed upon them, because that's what it is. You're commissioned, and certainly there's other commissioning sources. You have ROTC, you have OCS, you even have direct commissioning. So it's really incumbent upon all of our commissioned officers to really understand that they're the day they pin on, plus a basic course, maybe a specialty school like Ranger School or something else. They're in charge of our young men and women, and we refer to it as our national treasure, and I don't think that's an overstatement. And I remind them that there's parents and siblings and friends that are hoping they're really good people.
Yeah,
they're good leaders.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Well, I think it's amazing that you go back to West Point as much as you do and you talk to them. And the West Point, I've had an opportunity to sit on a couple panels and do a couple things up there, and I'm always just overcome with the magnitude and the loyalty and just the amazingness of the cadets there. And there's a reason that it is the academy that it is, and it has the professors that it has, and all the faculty. So after
So what's interesting about it for people like you and me, more so me, because I'm even further removed, is getting an opportunity to sit in and amongst a demographic that you're probably not going to gravitate towards.
Yeah,
somewhere between 18 and 22, and believe it or not, they do things different than we did.
yeah,
and in many cases, I personally find them as a much better place than I was at that time. And I remind people of that. I said, I don't think the Corps of Cadets has problems. I think it actually, if you get up there and you look at it, you're quite impressed.
Yeah, the last time that I went up there, one of the instructors that I'd served with, I think in 275, I'd served with him in 275. He asked me to come and sit on a class, and they were actually talking about an operation that many of us were a part of, and the questions they were asking, I'm like, there ain't no way in hell I was asking those kind of questions when I was a 19-year-old, 21 person.
I tell people it's actually kind of like talking to Rangers too, or anybody in the community. You better get up there and be authentic, because the first time you're not, they will tune you out in a second.
Yeah, they see through that shit very quickly. I agree 100%. Well, after graduating, from West Point, sir, what was your path to actually end up serving in 275?
Yeah, so I came out of what we used to call IBOLC now, or excuse me, the Infantry Officers Basic Course, IOBC,
right?
Now referred to as the IBOLC,
Yeah.
and you're on a preordained path. I was already airborne qualified. So you're supposed to go to Ranger School, and then I was going to go to the 82nd Airborne Division. And I think I said this at our 275 reunion, and everybody has a Ranger School story. And for years, I wouldn't even tell it, because it's you either went to Ranger School and made it, or you didn't go to Ranger School, or something happened. Yeah. And actually, what happened with our class, we came out of the course the year prior. Apparently, they'd had a lot of winter injuries, and I found out. I didn't really read orders very closely. I don't know anybody who really does, but
no.
there's a little annotation. So somewhere in the M through Z, we picked up. We went from quota sources to space available, and I was in that pile of people that were space available. And we went over to the Ranger Department, and they promptly said, "You're leaving, and you're going to your units." And so I shipped off to the 82nd Airborne Division as somebody without a Ranger tab, which of course you're convinced the world is over at that point. Yeah, and this is the time when the 82nd had just returned from Grenada, so they've got combat patches and CIBs and all kinds of Grenada war stories on there, and it worked out okay. I'd eventually get back to Ranger School, and actually after I graduated from Ranger School, that's when I put in my packet to go to 2nd Ranger Battalion. But I spent time as a platoon leader and time as an S3 Air, a little bit of acting XO, but did all my first assignments at Fort Bragg, North Carolina, now Fort Liberty, as you mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
And was very excited to go to a Ranger Battalion and have the opportunity to go to a battalion. This is pre-RASP days. We haven't you just go into the RIP program and a little bit of a gentleman's course, although you did have the standards that you had to pass. But I knew I wanted to do it. I was actually presented with a little bit of a dilemma as I was getting ready to leave. As I said, I was the S3 We had a battalion change of command. My previous battalion commander was okay with me leaving, and my new battalion commander wanted me to stay. And the reason why is this was an organization that was going to go to be a cohort for Vincenzo, which is actually a pretty cool assignment.
Yeah,
But
absolutely.
I was set on going to a Ranger battalion. And so he presented me with one night of, hey, if you stay, I'll make you the recon platoon leader after but I want you to stay as the S3 to help us get over to Italy. And I waited about a day and I went back to him. It was a tough conversation, but I said, no, I think I really need to go to 2nd Ranger Battalion and give this a shot. So things could always change on this path we call a military career.
Yeah. Was there any Rangers or any leaders that kind of made you think that way about going to Ranger Battalion? Was there any influences that impacted that?
Oh, absolutely. We had lieutenants that had gone off. I watched them leave and go to a Ranger Battalion. But it was realistically, it was Ranger School, and it was the meeting those young PFCs and that are prior to them having their tabs. And I had two Ranger buddies, a guy named Matt Gilbert, Beast Gilbert, and a guy named Sterling Sawyer, and we still stay in touch today. But we started together, and we all finished at the same time. But it was just an opportunity to meet for the first time, really the private first class, who someday is going to be a sergeant major. But meeting them young in their careers and talking to them about what life is like in the Ranger Battalion, and that made it a no-brainer. As soon as I graduated, I put in the packet.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And you're not the first officer to actually say that, so that's good to hear. Well, what was your experience at 275 upon arrival?
275 was, it's been a long time, but when I just look back to 275, we were in a task condition standards phase for the Army. We may still be in that. I'm just not aware of it, but it was very rigid in the Ranger Regiment. Ranger Regiment had just been stood up, and 275 was a little bit more sua sponte, as you well know, and they liked being geographically separated from
right, we did,
from regiment. I'll talk about Joe Stringham on here a little bit because I was afraid of him for many years.
Good, yeah.
But they were a little bit looser, and just of their own accord was we'll look at the problem and we'll figure out we're going to assess the conditions, then we'll figure out how we're going to go ahead and get this done.
Yeah.
So that, of course you had that. But when you look back on it, and you saw it when we were up at JBLM Fort Lewis this past October, lifelong friends, and an officer and non-commissioned officer. I the names, and just being able to run down memory lane with the Earth Pigs from A Company.
Yeah.
We probably had about 10 or 15 people there.
That's amazing.
So you're looking at your privates, and they're all 60 years old, and you're looking at them going, hey, when did you guys get so old? But that was one of those positives coming out of it, but those friends. But it goes beyond just my platoon. I remember running into Staff Sergeant Greg Birch. I didn't know his first name was Greg. As a squad leader in A Company, and he was just getting ready to go do something. Yeah. And, Greg would disappear soon thereafter. Scotty Brazil, Dean Barnhart, Brian Briggs. Sitting over in B Company. Bill Lazinski, former regimental commander, but also a very important person in my life, certainly during those years. John Mesa-Hunis, Matt Ryerson. It was just an incredible list of people that you knew you were going to stay in touch with over the years. Chris Sorensen, Pete Blaber, Mike Koss. Just the list goes on and on. And, one I'll shout out to, and I hope he's able to listen to it. He's a little sick right now. Vinnie McMahon was one of my E5 sergeant squad leaders in the Earth Pigs. And he literally just ETS'd. So he had gone straight through everything, but he ETS'd in E5, disappeared on us, went back to New City, New York, and joined the fire department. But Vinny, the Vinnie McMahons of the world, these are just incredible people that you still stay in touch with this many years later. but what an experience. I don't know where if it still continued, because I don't know if they sat in a session where Randy Inman, who by the way was PFC and specialist Randy Inman, when Lieutenant Miller had a chance to run around with him, and we talked about that on the stage a little bit. He mentioned South Rainier, and you just remember the field problems in South Rainier, the long movements. Like you really didn't believe anybody was going to really make you do this on an RTEP. And you started counting up the clicks and the miles at the conclusion of it. You go, they really made us move this distance under loads and executing our collective tasks there. So it just is a special time, and what a place to learn the craft of being in the Army, being an infantry platoon leader, and having this quality non-commissioned officers and enlisted personnel around you. Just phenomenal.
Yeah. It's funny. I just talked to General Farrader a couple weeks ago, and he actually said it in the podcast. He said, South Rainier, the worst place in the world to do movements through. And I was like, I thought about it for a second. I'm like, I don't think he's wrong.
No. I can recall, because our battalion commander, Jeff Ellis, another name.
Yeah.
He loved those field problems. And we'd probably about this time of the year, we'd jump into I don't remember the HLZ down very far down in the deep south there.
Point Salinas. Or no, deep south. No,
was it Rogers maybe?
No, Roger. I know which one you're talking about. I think it's Merrill. It
might be Merrill.
Yeah.
But I recall jumping in, and this is 86 probably. Jumped in, and we actually had a fatality on the jump. One of the new guys from A Company had a complete malfunction. We lost his life, and so we're assembling in the night, putting this, getting the platoon and the companies organized, getting ready to move on to our March objectives, and you're thinking, well, maybe there's going to be an admin halt because we're going to sort through this a little bit. There was none of that. It was the people that needed to take care of our casualty took care of our casualty, and off we went. And I actually moved with Jay Brimston. I don't know I moved with Jay Brimston's platoon that night, and I remember because it was a company XO, and Jay, we just got these Gore-Tex sleeping bags, and Jay was not going to be a Gore-Tex Ranger. There was no way. And so I'm kind of sitting there in the patrol base wanting to pull out my Gore-Tex sleeping bag, but you're ashamed. Yeah. And Jay, what a tough Ranger Jay is.
Yeah. You don't want to be the first one. That's just a general rule, is you don't want to be the first one. Yeah. Well, sir, I'd love for you to just, before we kind of break, at the 20-minute mark, just talk, because you went on to so many different capacities within JSOC and special operations and, high-level command throughout, and then, at the NATO level as well. I'd love for you to just, kind of talk about for a minute here, how that was a foundational period for you. You just listed so many great leaders across the Army. You just rattle them off, and there were huge influences on you, as you highlighted. I just loved, you to talk for a minute about how that was kind of a foundational period for you.
The Ranger battalions taught you what right was supposed to look like, and if you didn't get it right, you redid it. You went back until you could get it right, and not to take away from any other organization in the military, but it was very evident that you were going to meet the standard before you're going to move on to the next. You weren't going to progress until you met the standard. And so as I looked at the time in the regiment, whether it was, or Second Ranger Battalion in particular, whether it was a live fire or it was a jump, an assemble, whether it was a river movement, you were going to do it correctly, and you were going to do it correctly really using the fundamentals. And it was a very fundamental based organization, and I stood by that. There's times you deviate from the fundamentals, but you better learn them first. You better know what you're deviating from. And I thought, what a great place to understand the field and really go through some periods of privation. And we do that to ourselves in the Ranger Battalion from time to time.
Yes, we do. Well, I definitely want to dive in. It's been a conversation we've been having lately about, adversity and shared adversity and how that's a fundamental thing, not only within special operations, but the military by and large, and, how maybe we've kind of deviated away from that. And that's some of the problems we see. But before we do, I just want to transition 1 second here. So, hey, thank you everybody for tuning in. If you want to hear the rest of the episode with General Miller, please sign up and be an exclusive member. So we're going to really kind of dive into a lot of the rest of his career, some of the operations and some of the things that he's done throughout over a 3-decade career. And there's a lot to definitely unpack. So we're pretty excited to dive into that. And then to all exclusive members, hey, thank you for your support. Now let's deep dive into the remarkable career of General Miller.